We begin our first show of the new year today with the significant and controversial Canada-China relationship reset.
Canada and China have reached a preliminary but landmark trade agreement to remove trade barriers and reduce tariffs. We're building a web of new connections with China to create transformative opportunities for Canadian workers, build more stability, more certainty, and prosperity on both sides of the Pacific.
During a trip to China this week, Prime Minister Mark Carney and his senior cabinet officials secured a resolution to the long-standing bilateral trade spat. Beijing is significantly lowering its tariffs on Canadian canola and other agricultural products, and in exchange, Canada will allow up to 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles into the Canadian market at a marginal tariff rate. The deal, though, has big domestic implications. Ontario is slamming it as a mess that will jeopardize the province's already beleaguered auto industry.
This was not thought out properly. It wasn't consulted. It was a knee-jerk reaction as far as I'm concerned. And this is going to be a big, big problem.
The prairie provinces, meanwhile, are celebrating the much-needed relief for their agricultural industries. Scott Moe is Premier of Saskatchewan. He was on the trip with the Prime Minister and joins us from Beijing. Hi, Premier. Good to see you as always. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for making the time.
Well, thank you, Vassie, for you making the time as well.
I know it's late where you are. I wanted to start off on the agreement reached where tariffs is concerned and ask you quite plainly, what message, Premier, you think it sends China that Canada did what China wanted and lifted those EV tariffs?
They didn't. The EV tariffs are still in place. There's a small quota of tariffs that of a number of EVs that will be allowed to come to Canada with a lower tariff level. And really what this is doing is, I think step one is returning us to a trade environment that we had, let's say a year ago, where agricultural products are able to enter the Chinese market with a low or no tariff environment. And two, with the number of MOUs that were signed, really provides the building blocks for us to expand our export opportunities and some of the, the strategic partnership opportunities that we might be able to aspire to with not only China, but a number of Asian countries through China.
I guess why I framed the question the way I did, though, and I take your point on the quota, it is a marked change on EVs from what existed before. And the way that, the ambassador a few months on this program put it was, if you do this, we'll do that. That's what the federal government ended up doing. What precedent does that set the next time China is unhappy with something Canada has done?
It's 49,000 EVs. That's about what was imported into Canada last year. It's less than 3% of our auto market. And in exchange for that, we are able to have access for literally billions and billions of dollars of various agricultural products, seafood products, and others. And so, as we find our way through, respecting some of the differences that China and Canada might have, but also working together to collaborate on the trade that was announced today, but also through the MOU, some of the opportunities that we'll have moving into the future. And I would say that some of those opportunities may be partnerships in the auto manufacturing space, much like we had to pivot or shift to 20 or 30 years ago when we were faced with a number of different manufacturers that were also looking to access the Canadian market.
Premier Ford in Ontario does not view the potential impact of that in the same way or as minimal as you are characterizing it. In fact, he says it puts in so many words, it puts the sector in his province at risk. China, in this instance, leveraged the fact that canola and agricultural products mean a lot to one part of the country, and the auto sector means a lot to another part of the country. They effectively pitted one part of the country against the other. If we have acquiesced, as it appears we have, what does that tell them, again, about the next time?
I actually disagree entirely with the framing of that question, Vassie. The agriculture industry, the canola industry, the oilseed industry, the pulse industry is important to virtually each and every part of this country, up to and including Ontario, and certainly many other provinces across Canada. Second to that, I would say that the foundation and the building blocks of this agreement provide tremendous opportunities for electrical partnerships, energy partnerships moving forward. forward that will benefit, provinces potentially like Newfoundland, for example, as well as some of the provinces like British Columbia that are producing LNG that is finding its way to the Chinese market as well, and there's opportunities for more of that to happen. Second to that, I would say that there's a changing environment in the manufacturing space, and this opens up a number of years for us as Canadians, whether it be in Ontario or other provinces, to engage on what our manufacturing future is going to look like, and to create some of the partnerships like we did 20 or 30 years ago with many of the manufacturing brands that are commonplace in manufacturing their vehicles in Canadian communities today, but were not 30 years ago.
When you flag the potential opportunity for example, for more cooperation and more investment from China on energy, I remember covering when the Harper government approved the CNOOC-Nexen deal, and the degree to which after that they established a national security framework that would not permit something like that from happening again because of the risk that was assessed at the time, which federal governments since have actually assessed to be even greater from a national security perspective of China. Do you really think it's a good idea for China to end up owning more of our natural resources sector? Does that not put our country more at risk from a security perspective?
I think the conversation is important to have on how we expand our resource sector and other sectors, and ensure that we are creating access to market, those products that we are producing that are providing, whether it be energy security or, in case of battery elements, that security for our energy future, or in the ag sector, our agricultural products as well, which provide food security to so many. But I would say a couple of things. The tone of the conversation that I saw here in Beijing this week was one is the most positive tone that I have seen in my time as Premier, which is nearing in on 8 years now. That is a good thing. It's also a tone that is very much respecting the differences that we might have between Canada and China, respecting those differences and moving forward where we are able to collaborate. And so I think it's a great day for Canadians, notwithstanding some discussions that I'm sure we'll have in the next number of days and weeks. But all in all, it is going to be a net positive to the Canadian economy, and going to provide us some opportunities to really engage on what our future looks like over the next 5, 10, and 15 years.
And I certainly understand that point, and I ask with great respect, like the differences that you allude to are not minor, right? And the reason I ask about Chinese investment in critical sectors, for example, or strategic assets here in Canada, is I get wanting to sell them more LNG, more oil, more canola, more peas. I understand all of that. But when we allow China, who we know for a fact tried to interfere in our elections, we know for a fact supports regimes in Venezuela and Iran and in Russia, when we allow them more access to those strategic assets, is that not a national security risk? And can you understand Canadians who are watching this unfold with great trepidation?
There's some ownership portions that they have of some of the, the operating assets that we have in Canada today. And I would say that when you look more broadly at countries that we trade with around the world today, that environment certainly has changed, and changed significantly, in particular over the course of the past year, where we see the President of the United States that is resetting trade relations, not just with Canada, but with multiple countries all at the same time. And so we are in a very different environment. And it is important for us at the subnational level, but more important for our federal government to be engaging with all countries that are important to us. And our second largest trading partner the last number of years as Canadians has been China. And so it's, I think, of vital importance for not only our Prime Minister, but we had a delegation of 6 ministers and the parliamentary secretary that were on the ground the last number of days here in China, been engaging the last number of months, and we welcome that. Not just with China, not just with the United States of America, but with many, many trading partners and countries around the world. And I would say this. The past number of months, we've seen this Prime Minister Carney, really elevate the Canadian credibility that we have in that international sphere of influence and trade influence. And we have always felt that needs to be a priority for our country, and we very much welcome the priority that Prime Minister Carney and the federal government is putting into that space as we speak. And I think we're seeing the fruition of some of that engagement with this agreement, which I think is foundational to the future of Canada today.
I'm going to leave it on that note. Premier, I appreciate your time as always, and very much that you stayed up so late for this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Vashi.
Coming up, Trump takeover. U.S. President Donald Trump's hopes to acquire Greenland are causing widespread concern among allies. What could it mean for NATO? Ambassadors to Canada from Germany, the UK, and France will all be here together next to answer that question.